Hey guys, time for our next grammar lesson. I started this lesson with that little clip from Seinfeld because I wanted to emphasize, what Jimmy's problem was. And that was that he didn't know how to use pronouns. So he was stuck talking about himself in the third person. Either that or his ego was just so big he had to speak about himself in the third person. Either way, it's really annoying when people do that. So let's get started. What exactly is a pronoun? A pronoun is a word that can be used as a substitute for a noun. So in short, it replaces a noun. You can also think of it as a pronoun. It's good at being a noun. It can take its place whenever needed. So when are some times when you would need to use a pronoun? Well, we use pronouns for two primary reasons. The first one is to avoid repetition of nouns, and then to avoid speaking about ourselves in the third person. And then there's a third job that pronouns can do, some of them. Some of them show possession. All right, before we go any further with pronouns, we have to learn this vocabulary word, and it is antecedent. We talked about some root words during class. A-N-T-E means before. So that's actually a prefix, and it means before. So this is the word that comes before for which the pronoun is substituted. So it's the noun that the pronoun is taking the place of. So whenever I refer to antecedent, we're looking back in the sentence to find the word that the pronoun is taking the place of. Let's look at an example. Penelope the penguin climbed atop the iceberg, and then, just because she could, she slid down it. So we have some nouns in this sentence. We have Penelope, we have iceberg, we have some other nouns besides this, but those are the two that we're going to be looking specifically at. So starting with the pronoun she, the antecedent would be Penelope. That is who we're talking about. The next pronoun in the sentence is the word it, and these are both personal pronouns. And it refers to the iceberg. So in this sentence, Penelope and iceberg would be the antecedents. Now today we're going to be talking about the biggest category of pronouns, which are personal pronouns. And at this point, I would like for you to pause the video and copy this chart down on your own paper. It's going to come in really handy, especially when it comes to looking at errors between the subjective and the objective case of personal pronouns. All right, now that you have your notes down, let's take a look at the ways that personal pronouns can be classified. The first way that they can be classified is in number. So your personal pronouns are either going to be singular or plural, just like nouns. The second way to classify pronouns is by person. Think about stories that you've read and their narrators. So you know from the past that there's a difference between a first-person narrator and a third-person narrator. So let's go over the pronouns that you would use for each one. So when we're writing a story in first person, or if we're writing, a journal entry or something about ourselves, we're going to be using these first person pronouns. I, me, we, us. And then we have our possessive personal pronouns of my and mine. And then we also have possessive pronoun plural, which would be our. Second person pronouns are really simple to learn. They're not used often in fiction writing, but they are used a lot in magazine articles, newspaper articles, how-to pieces of writing where you're learning to do something. Anytime the audience or the writer is talking directly to you, they would use the word you. So these are our second person pronouns, you, and then our possessive would be your and yours. All right, the last person is third person. And this is, in terms of fiction, when you have a narrator outside of the story, it's not a character in the story, so it's not seeing it through his own eyes. We would use the third person pronouns. So if we're talking about someone else other than ourselves, we have he, him, and then possessive his, she, her, and then possessives would be her and hers. We have it and its. Notice there's no apostrophe with its here. And then Their plural would be they, them, and possessive plural would be their and theirs. All right, so a little more complicated is when we get into cases of pronouns, and this has to do with where you place different pronouns in the sentence. Now, the first case is the subjective case. When do I use the subjective case? Well, there are two places you would use the subjective case. The first is when you need to replace the noun that is the subject of a sentence. So here, he is the subject of the sentence. He is the hero of the story. The second sentence here, we would use the plural personal pronoun, subjective personal pronoun, we. We have an introductory phrase, for once, we were on time. So the subject of the sentence, who we're talking about here in this sentence, is we. We is the subject, so we would use we rather than us. Another time that you would use the subject pronoun, and there are a lot of questions about this is a frequent error, is after the linking verbs am and is. So here in our example sentence, it says the winner is she. That is actually correct, even though it might sound a little awkward to you. We would not say the winner is her. We'd say the winner is she. So those are the two times when you would use the subject case, and we will be practicing this a lot more in class. So if you're not quite understanding it right now, that's okay. I just want you to get your notes down, and then we will spend some time practicing together. All right, moving on to the objective case. When do you use the objective case? Well, there are two places that you use it. First is when it follows a verb and it's completing the meaning of that verb. This is also known as a direct object. Now, we'll talk more about direct objects later, but for right now, I really just want you to concentrate on the fact that the objective pronouns go after the verb. So looking at the first example sentence, it says, I accidentally hit him with the ball. Our verb here is hit. So we would use the objective pronoun him directly after it. Second sentence, my parents sent me to boarding school. Again, we have a verb, the word sent, and we would follow it up with the objective pronoun me. All right, the other time when you would use an objective pronoun is when it's the object of a preposition. Looking at the first sentence, between you and me, I hate this. Now, the first word in that sentence is our preposition. And quick review of prepositions, they often give directions in time or space. So between is giving a direction in space. So between you and me. You would not say between you and I. However, that is a frequent error. So when you have a preposition, the pronoun that comes after it needs to be an objective pronoun. Look at the second sentence. Will you mail the letter for us? Here we have the preposition for, so we would need to follow up with the objective pronoun us. We would never use we there, which is the subjective form. We would always say us. So that's just a quick overview of subjective and objective pronouns. As I said, we will practice this a lot more in class, and I'll answer any questions you have about where to place each type. All right, so the last case to look at is the possessive case. Now, one big error that I want to just go ahead and get out of the way here is possessive pronouns can never be the subject of a sentence. They have to be paired with a noun because they show ownership. So you have to have a noun after the possessive pronoun. So this is my book. We have the possessive pronoun my, we have the noun after it book. We could also put it in the predicate of the sentence and say this book is mine. This is her book. This book is hers, and so on.